Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Banished Zone, featuring Bryn.
And also featuring Chris.
The show about flesh and blood that is in the basement.
It's in living color.
It's also goth. It's also about flesh and blood. You know how it goes.
It's in living color.
What do you mean it's in living color?
Look at that camera right there. Look at all the colors.
This one here?
Yeah. Look at all the color on there.
It's not black and white. But why is it living?
I don't know. Why did they call it living color back in the day?
I couldn't tell you. Anyway, we're here to talk about flesh and blood. It's a whole new year. It is a brand new time to talk about the game that we all know and love. If you are hearing a cat, we've had a cat thrust upon us.
They probably won't even hear her. These mics are too good.
I know, but she's around, and her name is Colette, and she might show up on the video stream.
I guess that's true. Also, if they can hear and they're like, is there a baby crying in the background that they're just completely ignoring?
That's true. I wouldn't want you to think that either.
There's a cat crying in the background.
There is a cat crying in the background. She has been fed twice today and doesn't need to eat for another couple of hours. So
she's fine. She weighs 10 pounds.
Don't worry about her. Yeah, it's sort of our cat for a little while. We don't know yet.
We'll see.
We don't need to get into that because this show is not about cats. It's about flesh and blood. And this episode is once again late.
We're terribly sorry. We were struck by debilitating illness.
Now we'd like to say...
Even now, I'm fighting through the fog of... No, I'm okay.
Now we'd like to say that the reason is because we had a great time on New Year's Eve. This is the first episode of the new year, 2023. I'd love to say that it's because we, are having a very fun time partying with our friends, maybe even playing Flesh and Blood. The answer is not true. I got sick with some sort of stomach problem, literally on New Year's Eve, and then right after Chris got it. So we've had a little bit of trouble finding time to record where we both don't feel like absolute dog shit.
Terrible. Was it on New Year's Eve we went to that armory and played, or was that the day before?
It
New
was,
Year's?
yeah.
Okay, so we did technically play some Flesh and Blood on New Year's Eve.
We did play New Year's Eve.
Forget how we did. Oh,
I ate shit. I did not do well.
I think I played 2-1 in the end.
I played Icelander. Did I win one?
I think you won one.
I think I won one.
I had to play you in the first round as Fi.
Oh, yeah, and you just barely snuck in a win.
I
feel like I could have won that game, too.
You could have, yeah. It's a very tight one.
It's a tight one.
Then I think after that I played Sean Yang's Briar, and I got pretty stomped on by Channel Mount Heroic. Not much you can do about that one. I don't really feel like I could block that game. Not enough.
You could block.
I used my entire hand to block, and then I died.
It's really hard, yeah.
And I forget who else I played in the third round there.
You don't remember? All right. Well, anyway, we had a good time.
It was definitely fun, though.
And then we had, when we, feeling great, had a decent time, came home. Oh, I remember I opened a box.
Oh, that's true. This was exciting.
I opened a box of, I was like, I ate shit. I don't feel great about who I'm going to play for ProQuest still. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I do want to play Icelander. And I was like thinking maybe I've been between like Brute and Icelander. And I was like, I need a couple more stuff. I also need E-strikes for Icelander, and I need a lot of Brute stuff that I still haven't like collected. So I was like, I'll grab a box of, they had them for cheap. And I was like, I'll grab a box of Wraith. Brought it home, and as you saw on the stream, I pulled a heart. So that's really cool. I highly recommend watching that video. It's very fun. Our reaction is crazy. I've never pulled a Fabled. It's really cool that the first Fable I ever pulled was the Welcome to Wraith one, I thought.
It was also a very like 0 to 60 box. Because like when you pulled the Soraya, you'd pull the Legendary, right? Like early on, you pulled the Crown of Dominion.
The Dynasty box was absurd because it was the Crown of Dominion, and then it was the Amethyst Tiara, and then it was the Extended Art Iron Song Pride.
Right. 3 different pulls that were like, oh wow, this is like a pretty solid.
We thought we were done, and then the Marvel
anything.
Soraya.
Yeah. Double Marvel, double Legendary box.
Right.
Yeah, but this box you just had pulled like an Alpha Rampage and like a Steel Blade Supremacy.
But I was like, you always want Red Sinks, you always want E-Pots. Like I just bought it for like
having fun opening Wraith. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
all of a
out
sudden,
came the heart.
Yeah, it was like a red disable and then a heart.
Well, of course.
It's really silly.
Yeah, so we haven't been doing much in terms of anything but Talishar. Chris, I think since the last episode, Chris has started streaming on twitch.tv/banished zone.
I guess that's true. I did a lot of streams last week, like after the episode had come out. Yeah, it's been very fun.
He's trying to start doing it, like 3-4 days a week?
Something like that, yeah, pretty regularly.
Having a good time with it seems. So, I mean, that's definitely subscribe there.
Yeah, check that out.
Twitch.tv/banished zone.
Yeah, it's still sort of budding, I'd say. There's like Flake streams on Talishar pretty regularly, and people obviously know who Flake is. There's a channel called Nighttime Fab, I think. He plays Bravo.
Okay.
I just started following someone named Sir Smurfington, and he was playing Icelander.
Sir Smurfington?
Sir Smurfington, yeah. He's not, nothing Smurf themed about the channel. I don't know where that, maybe just one of those that was his name, his username when he was 10
like
or
something awful or whatever.
Yeah.
Just never went away.
But that was fun to watch. So there's a few people who stream on Talishar, and I'll do my best to raid them and shout them out and stuff when I stream as well. Yeah, it's a fun time. It's a good way to get reps.
So how do you feel about that? I mean, like, do you think it will grow? Like, do you think that the Talishar streaming scene will become popular and like it'll help the game grow, or do you think that they'll cut it off?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I've been thinking about it because of how cagey they are about Talishar. Like, right. I feel like if you watch any James White interview, he's clearly the most uncomfortable when someone asks a question about Talishar. Like, he just walks way around the question. Like, I've seen interviews where someone is like, what do we think about Talishar? And he basically just like completely ignores he does not acknowledge the fact that it exists. And
do you think he hates it?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, they did already do. They had a setup for webcam games, right, during the pandemic, where you could play on your computer with real cards.
What do you mean by that? A setup?
Well, it wasn't like a concept until the pandemic hit, and then they were like, we should make it so people are allowed to play webcam games. Like, I mean, not that I think so.
They like said, "Hey, you could do that."
I think so. I think it was like.
Were they saying that we would take action if you stream? Because they couldn't do anything about you streaming your own cards, right?
No, not like a set. I just mean that they would like, hey, how about people run armories on webcam instead of locally, since they can't run them locally.
Okay.
So there's that, and then they also like made a TTS mod so people could like practice on there. Like, that was the thing that they did and approved of, I think, was being on TTS. So that was a way to practice and play the game. And then
right, the TTS thing I remember being the thing that they had to approve.
Mm-hmm. And then Talishar is just like not explicitly approved, and also is a little easy. Like, TTS, you have to like download a game, right? Like a thing, and then set it up, and then you have to be like physically moving the cards around.
Right.
Talishar just kind of presents a game to you, and like I could see them being annoyed because Talishar sort of says to people like, hey, this is the rules of the game. Here is how these cards interact and work and stuff. And it's sometimes wrong because there's bugs or they're like not programmed.
It's mostly not wrong.
It's mostly not wrong.
Especially now. I mean, is there any like rules that they absolutely get wrong?
I forget. It's if anything comes up, it's like pretty edge case, like a thing where you technically should get a timing window, or it's really nothing major. And it's like, as a fan made thing, it's very impressive. So I don't know if I think James White.
So that's what I think is interesting. It's like, it feels like such a good thing for the game to have Twitch, because like there's Twitch streamers who play Magic and Pokemon and you know, Runeterra and Gwent and all of this stuff, who have a lot of followers.
Yeah.
Imagine Bay being one of them.
Yeah. Even Flake has thousands of followers, which in the Flesh and Blood world I think is pretty big.
Right, but I mean, you can imagine, like, as it grows, there's going to be more and more market for this kind of, you know, content, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And it just feels like such a bad idea to be like, we don't want that.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Like, and on one hand, because we talked about this before, like the community of Flesh and Blood is very much feels like kind of based on in person, where it's like it's still the internet, and like a lot of people don't know each other through the internet and are making connections over, you know, Skypes and doing podcasts together and
Discords
tweeting at each other and Discord.
Yeah.
But we all know that we're gonna see each other in person.
That's true. Yeah, the end goal is always to be like meeting up with someone at Worlds or at a tournament or something. Not
right.
Just,
so it feels like it feels like it's kind of about keeping it at a place where, but that it's always going to stay good. The problem is that like the bigger you get, the more assholes you're going to have, the less it's going to feel like you have to play nice with people because you're going to see them in person or whatever. And even in small communities, they can be backbitey or like things can get dramatic or whatever. Sometimes in certain cases, depending on the community, more so. And I talked about this, I think, on the last episode, like in music.
Sure.
Like, there can be extremely competitive, like dramatic stuff happening.
I hadn't thought about you don't want Flesh and Blood to start feeling too insular. Like you don't want people to be like, hey, if you weren't into this game in 2022, then you like
you're not real punk.
You're not something like that, where people are just like looking down on new people. Because I feel like the thing about Talishar is that before Talishar existed, when there was TTS, the whatever you want to call them, the top level players, people on teams, super competitive players, they were spending hours grinding on TTS with each other to practice games, just because sometimes they don't live in the same part of the world at all and they want to practice games. So I feel like if you get rid of Talishar, people will just use something else to practice games. Talishar just makes it easier for like random people to find that practice and to get that
and then
experience.
Already, with Salty Logs, and I think we've talked about this too, but like, with Talishar, you see more people behaving poorly.
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
maybe that's one of if there's anything that they dislike about it, maybe that's one of the things, that there's like an association of like rude Flesh and Blood players or people being like, I
don't think that
that's pretty edge case kind of a thing. I don't know.
I don't think people are like, when people think about Talishar, I don't think they think asshole chatters. Like that's just an internet thing. It's an outlier and it's kind of funny. I don't know. I just think it's interesting because I think a lot of people want to, like with anything, want to sort of make a living or make their channels or identities about playing the game. And Talishar allows that in a way I don't think it was able to be allowed before.
It just seems so much harder to try to film yourself playing with physical cards. Like that's feasible.
There's very few people who even do it.
Yeah. It's like a lot of the channels, I think people have even said, I remember Red Zone Rogue saying this, he was like, when I make content like that, it gets less views than content that feels way easier to do. Like just content where he's opening packs or talking to the camera or whatever.
Right.
Gets more views than like gameplay content, which requires all this editing and a good setup and multiple cameras and two people in the same place to play cards. Like,
yeah, I can't imagine. I wonder about Spike Feeder's Fab, which has the sort of best card gameplay I've seen on YouTube, except for Shuffle Up and Play. Like they don't quite do animations, but they have like overlays and they have the scores on screen and
and Shuffle Up
show the cards extra big and stuff.
Yeah, Shuffle Up and Play feels like a TV show level of editing almost, and it comes out it takes a pretty long time to come out and clearly costs a lot of like dozens of work hours to produce.
Yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, Shuffle Up and Play is on Talarian Community College's channel.
The Professor. That's his evil twin from Boston.
The Professor. Professor. Talarian Community College is his channel, but he clearly has a team of editors and and people who are and cinematographers. They've showed pictures of their setup, and there's like 3 digital cameras that are all like very nice cameras, being like all arranged everywhere, and they've got like hanging mics.
His basement is practically
mics
a studio, and he has a team, and it
clearly
still takes time. It's like how many a month come out? Like two something?
Maybe?
Like,
I don't know.
It takes a while.
And then Spike Feeders were churning them out. For a while, but they clearly had to take a break.
Yeah.
Spike Feeders Fab, Bill from theirs on Living Legends.
Mm-hmm.
You should check if you follow them. If you don't,
yeah, it's like Bill and there's a guy named Jan. I think I feel bad not remembering other people's names on the channel.
yeah, Jan, and then isn't there also
I think there's a girl named Kaylee is on there somewhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
and then Jim. Sometimes
there's someone named Jim. Okay.
Well, Jim is his brother. I don't know. He's in the Azalea cult.
Oh, Jim from Fab TCG Cards.
Uh-huh.
He's also someone's brother.
He's Bill's brother.
Jim is Bill's brother.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I realized
think
that.
so.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well.
Sorry if I'm spreading misinformation online, Bill.
No, you'll just.
But I'm pretty sure that's true.
If that's not true, you'll just crudely beep over it with the correct information. So we said the truth.
I will not. Yeah.
You're not going to do that. Okay. Well,
I mean, literally, you can edit this if you'd like to.
Hey, I'm sick still. I'm sapping
you
all
real
my strength.
Seem sick.
I'm putting out a show for the audience. It's taking. Yeah. But yeah, I mean that there's the fact that there's those. The only channel that does. There's Fabrica, which is well known for just like overhead, clean, edited. Flesh and Blood gameplay.
Oh yeah,
and that's the channel that does gameplay. But in terms of actual like gameplay, where there's also people's faces talking and stuff,
right?
It's like the amount of effort that they have to put in versus the amount of effort that it takes me to like turn on a webcam and a microphone and open up Twitch and play on Talishar. It's like it's really easy to just like have my face and me talking over a game.
Yeah, and I feel like it's hard for me to imagine anybody who running a company not wanting that sort of exposure for their game, because I don't really see what it loses them, because like there is no product there. Like it's just an advertisement for Flesh and Blood. Go to the store, play the game. You know.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
and this is what I said when Talishar first came out. Like as long as they don't start trying to run armories or 10Ks, like as long as there's no like, all right, sign up for this Talishar, we'll do the biggest, because it'd be so easy, like
right.
Talishar sponsored, like min-max games sponsored, like tournaments. It's all going to be online and you win money. That seems like
enter into a crypto pool or
they
something.
don't want that, and I get that. They don't want you to be able to play the game competitively without being in person. Sure.
Yeah. I
understand. It's a totally different thing. And also Talishar is not quite up to snuff to be like, this is a competitive, like, what if you're like, oh, should I have to undo? Like, cause there's a bug or whatever, like.
What if your power crashes on your
computer? I think the way it is right now is good, but you can kind of imagine Talishar becoming slick enough where it's like, is this an official? Because I've been in the Discord and there's lots of people who are like making nicer animations to like, like hit and like.
Oh, in the Talishar Discord?
Yeah. I don't know if those people are still working on it, but like the animations to like shuffle and like get cards like started looking more and more like Magic Arena and looking nicer and being like,
trick your brain into feeling like
if
you're actually
starting
shuffling cards or whatever.
If you're starting to do that and you're getting, exactly. Like at what point does it look too much like an official product?
Yeah. Because I was gonna say I feel like Talishar will be in a great spot if it stays. This is absolutely no shade to Talishar and the devs in any way, but if it stays a little shitty and like janky, where it like looks a little goofy and old. I mean, it's like sort of charming in a way to some people that it looks like an older web product and doesn't have this like slick web 3.0 or whatever.
I love it for that reason.
It's cool. Yeah.
I think it looks like a web 1.0 website where it's a single serve thing. It doesn't look like their style sheets.
It has little like clicky sounds and dings and stuff. But yeah, it's like at the end of the day, it's nowhere near actually playing with real cards where you can look at the real art. You can experience, hold a real dice, be interfacing with someone in front of you and playing the game.
Right.
It's completely different. And I think if it stays that shitty, because as it is right now, like I've seen on Flake's stream, like some people come in, because Flake is known for a lot of other games besides Flesh and Blood. People will come in and be like, hey, Flake, what's this game? And they'll be like, I didn't know it had an online client. And he tells them like, oh, this is an unofficial
Our
online
friend
client.
who has been one of my best friends, Austin, has been avoiding getting into Flesh and Blood because he knows he'll like it too much and he doesn't have time to invest into buying all the cards and
Simply
stuff.
Too busy.
But he walked in and then Chris was streaming and he was like, oh, it has an online client. Like, whoops. Like, I'm going to get into
Maybe
it
I'll
now.
try that, yeah.
And I think this is what I'm saying, is that I think it's it's hard not to imagine the amount of people who go check it out because it has an online client translates to people buying the cards and going in person.
It feels like it's only upside. Yeah, because it just is like...
What is the downside?
Yeah, because I feel like
I'd like to hear. Tell me in the comments.
I feel like the only downside argument is if it gets people to just play Talishar instead of going to play in person, which to me, I feel like doesn't really hold water. And I don't know. Like I could imagine there being some people who like don't... They're never gonna care enough. Like maybe they already play Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh or something, and they're like, I kind of want to try Flesh and Blood, and they play some Talishar, and they're like, this deck's fun. I can't afford the cards, so I'll just play it online. And like that person was never. It's like the same kind of argument about like if someone is like torrenting an album, and it's like, would they have bought the album if they hadn't downloaded the torrent or whatever? And most likely they wouldn't have. So are you gonna say it's like a lost sale, or are you just gonna say that? They were just trying it out, you know? Like, I feel like a lot of people might fuck around with Talishar to see what Flesh and Blood is like. Many of them will not actually buy cards. Some of them will be like, oh, this game is cool. I want to get cards now. And then go play in person.
Yeah. And I mean, but the thing is that there's gonna be some people who go to Talishar, like it, and don't have time for a game in their life, and don't buy the cards. And don't play it anywhere else.
Right.
And it's just like a fun little like solitaire game they play, a very complicated, solitaire game they play online. Because you can do a Blitz Talishar game in 15 minutes. Like
easily, yeah.
You know,
if you get 2 aggro decks,
if they get, and that's the thing, if they get it enough if they get it fancy enough and it works on the phone and stuff, people are just going to be like, well, quick little Blitz game. Yeah. You know, the way they do Magic now. And I think that that's not what they want Flesh and Blood to be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know how you can make a new card game in 2022 or 2019 when they made it and feel like no one will make this.
Right.
They must have known it would have been made. And they're like, I
don't even know.
I guess we'll just cross that bridge when they come, you know, like when they come to it. Seems odd. And I mean, like,
some people say stuff like they'll eventually have to make their own digital version, which is,
and
like,
I don't think they do.
I don't agree with at all. They can make whatever version they want.
They don't have to.
Paper. Yeah.
And then, you know, they can continually, as we've said many times, and lots of people have noted, they're a very successful company. The game is doing extraordinarily well. Against all odds, considering this is not usually how TCGs go.
Yeah.
Ones that aren't Magic or Pokemon.
That aren't based on anything people have heard of before.
They don't usually last this long, and when they do last this long, they're usually not skyrocketing in popularity.
I guess that's the thing, too, is that they're really busy. They're going to be really busy this year. They're going to have to like hire new people, work on a lot of new stuff, get more tournaments going and running for more prize money. So why would they take... It would feel like sort of a waste of time for them to be like, let's do a takedown request.
Well, okay, so yeah. I don't think they're going to.
Yeah, I mean,
like, I don't think they're going to this year. But in the future, like, we have a game where the creators have. So say you get somebody at the level of Majin Bay. Maybe it's Chris. Maybe Chris starts streaming every single day. People start finding it, you know, and then, you know, you've got a couple streamers. Flake and Chris are, you know, couple 10,000 subscribers, and the, you know, people are watching Flesh and Blood. It's becoming a thing. Twitch adds a category for it.
Yeah, that's one thing, is that it's under the card games category because it doesn't have its own client or category.
Which no one's really explained to me why.
As far as I understand, it's because it needs like an official, like Magic Arena is like an official like video game client thing that plays Magic, so that's what the category is based on.
Okay, so it has to be a.
Well, there's also, not entirely true, because there's like poker is a category, so I don't know what the category is for poker. But it's probably the kind of thing that like LSS could lobby for if they wanted to.
But they're not going to.
And I'm sure they don't necessarily want to. Not that they would be like...
But don't they? Like, wouldn't they like it if people were doing like webcam? Because isn't there one channel that you found that was doing like in person?
It was just on Twitter.
We could do that.
Somebody retweeted, and it was like ProQuest testing, and it was like 2 guys playing paper Flesh and Blood and streaming it and talking to the chat. And it's like,
which is cool.
That's harder, but you could do, like, we could do a janky version of that with like our current setup, just like live stream our card table.
Right.
So yeah, it's like,
so, but wouldn't you want the little category for that?
yeah, or like when Channel Fireball is streaming an event or whatever, when there's like Worlds or Nationals or Battle Hardens happening,
right?
Wouldn't you want to be able to click that? Because it's like, even though Flesh and Blood is not a digital game, it's kind of an esport in that way, because
Absolutely.
It's like people watch it on Twitch, and Flake is one of the faces of the game, and he made his name streaming on Twitch and broadcasting for Gwent, the digital only game, and then now he's broadcasting for Flesh and Blood. So it's like the world surrounding it is similar to esports, even though it's a paper game.
Right, and I think it to me, I guess, and I'd love to hear like Gottlieb's opinion and James White's opinion, but like, I just feel like for a game, it's not hypocritical for a game to be called Flesh and Blood and have itself connected on the internet in the ways that people expect of a modern day game, and not have an official client. Actually, I even think you could have an official client, and just never have it cost money.
Like, it's just like Talishar. It's like, this is the client for testing and
it's
showcasing.
The same thing. They don't make it. They don't spend money on it. It's just like they like officially have it graced as like, this is the one we Talishar gets more and more people. If people want to make it and fans want to run it, like, even that I don't think is hypocritical. I think it's like,
that's true.
It's kind of just the way the world works and the way marketing works now. It'd be like a company being like, we're gonna be a running shoe, we're gonna be a sports shoe brand, but we're not gonna be on TV. Like, we're not going to advertise on television.
Or we're like, you're not supposed to use the shoes to run on a treadmill, only on a
And it's not fair. And these aren't like bad comparisons. I'm just saying, like, to a certain extent, the world we live in right now requires a certain kind of marketing to the people, just because the people who are going to play this kind of thing are in these spaces and see it from these spaces. So
I was driving say, like, people, especially those kind of people,
driving people towards the LGS, good. Driving people, only allowing people to like play officially in person is important, and I think they should say that. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having tools that are online, that create online spaces to play the game.
Because I feel like there's a sort of like, if you weren't lucky enough like us to be right next door to the first Pro Tour, then you probably followed it through like the main Discord or Flesh and Blood Twitter or all the YouTube channels.
You're already
or whatever.
watching that shit online anyway.
If you're watching the broadcast of the Pro Tour, you're watching it on Twitch online, and it's like, I feel like all of those things, there's a sort of like, you could see all of the content creators interacting with each other and meeting, and you could see people playing in person and being able to like watch the games in person, and be like, oh, it looks really fun to be at that event, and then it sort of like is a feedback loop that makes you want to go to these events.
Exactly.
And get the cards, and
you wouldn't be like, oh, you can't film and stream the coverage of the live event. Why not? So I think whether it's in paper or online, the broadcasting of that is good. Of play. I don't know. It's very complicated, and as I've said before, I definitely don't envy the situation, but I feel like at the same time it's not that big of a deal. It's definitely very, like, as I was saying, it's really nascent. There's not many people doing it, and as far as I can tell, everyone, like, I don't want to speak for every single person who streams it, but the people I've seen, there's like me and Flake and a couple other people that I mentioned, are all like people who play in person, like play in paper and love
at
the
armories,
game,
love the game, and are even explicitly, like, Flake, whenever he streams, is like ProQuest practice. It's like he's trying to practice on his deck. So
especially right now.
It's like right now, everyone on Talishar probably is trying to practice their ProQuest deck. So I feel like as long as it's pretty explicitly like, this is like a warm up, or this is the next best thing to actually going and playing in person. Like you're saying, if it starts reaching a point where it like has a category on Twitch, and somebody who is a big card game person is like, hey, I could get a lot of views for playing this game, and they do it with no intention of ever buying the cards, and then it means that they're basically just like making, like if there's someone who's making money off of playing Flesh and Blood using, copyrighted card art and copyrighted game system, and they're never actually buying real cards. If that is happening enough, that does present a weird situation to LSS where they're like, do we want to like tell people like you should also play in person if you're going to stream it and make money, or like is that weird, or do we want to get it off of Twitch? Do we want to just get it off the internet entirely? And I don't know what like the tipping point would be. And it's kind of hard to imagine because I feel like it's hard to get that into the game without playing it in person too, but I don't really know.
Right. So here's an interesting question that I just thought of.
Okay.
Imagine there is a content creator that has, I don't know how much is like the Professor or Bloody or whoever, like some whatever the big number is, like
you're saying
500,000 followers or subscribers or whatever.
Someone who's already like a well-paid professional Twitch streamer.
No. I'm saying that they are, but they're not already. That they got there from a content creator in general.
Okay.
And they have the most, and they got there from doing Flesh and Blood content.
Okay. What
do you think LSS wants that person's content to look like?
You're just like not Twitch, just like content in general.
It can be Twitch, it can be YouTube, but like somebody who has, whether it's a TikTok or a Twitch or a YouTuber, someone whose outreach is massive and it came from the community. Yeah. Like what kind of, like, do they want that person to be just an interviewer, a commentator, a podcaster? Like, I kind of feel like you'd want to have a content creator that plays the game. Yeah, that's right? True. Like
just gameplay that you can view.
Like it can't all be like, I love the Manor podcast. And obviously Michael and Roger are great players. I love Arsenal Pass and they're great players. But it's like it can't all just be talking about finicky, grindy mechanics. Like that's only ever going to appeal to very serious competitive players. And I feel like with anything like StarCraft or Magic or Pokemon or anything, the biggest content creators are playing the game, right?
Yeah, and I feel like even when like somebody can sort of, it's kind of easier to like, it's really hard to watch something like Arsenal Pass and like follow if they're like, okay, so you're playing Icelander into Kano, and then this is happening on the stack, and then you respond with this card. It's like if you're not a really like dialed into the rules already, that's like hard to follow. I feel like it's easier to follow if you're watching somebody playing a game as Icelander and Kano does something and they're like, oh, okay, it's obvious what we do here, and then they play a bunch of cards and win the game. It's like you don't have to know exactly what they're doing to know that it worked. You know what I mean? Like if you understand the game at a basic level. And I feel like that's kind of the appeal of a lot of like speedrunners or any kind of like video game creators where it's like based on expressing skill, is that somebody who has like a basic understanding. Like everyone played Mario 64 and then you watch someone speedrun it and you're like, I know why that's insane because that star was really hard when I was a kid, or that's
right.
That's not easy to do at all.
Right. But I think Flesh and Blood will get there too. Like there'll be people like in the same way like StarCraft is like, I don't know what the fuck is going on when I watch StarCraft 2 like esports, like people who are just really like good clicking. They're just like they're like they've got all their hotkeys matched to crazy shit.
Yeah, we're probably literally too old to follow what's happening because it's like if you're over 30 you're like, I mean, at least you're too old to like play competitive StarCraft, I think.
Oh, because your
reaction time slows down. Yeah.
Really?
I think so. Yeah. It's like, I mean, maybe we could get there, but it's just
I mean, I'm not trying to.
I know, I'm not trying to.
I haven't played that game since I was in high school. Yeah, and I liked it, but it's like...
It's like so much a sport that you're like, you peak in your 20s in terms of
like in basketball.
Physical ability.
Yeah. And that's cool and everything, but like the people who are, big players and content creators in that space, like are good players, right? So it's like, I know it's not exactly the same because you have people like Pleasant Kenobi and the Professor in the Magic arena who are big content creators who play some.
But you're saying Merfolk isn't cracked S tier deck? Merfolk bad?
I don't really know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, so I mean, like it's a weird situation because I don't know what Flesh and Blood wants. You know, like what does LSS want? Do they want, you know, a Majin Bay type character who is playing all the time and has like really good skill and is making like fun content of the game? Or do they want someone who's like talking about theory, or do they want all of it?
Yeah.
And I feel like if you want all of it, like you need to have some of it be streaming and you need to have some of it be Twitch.
Yeah.
And the only way that's going to happen is with an easy online client.
Yeah. I feel like especially with a game that's like clearly geared towards high level competitive play as much as Flesh and Blood is, it's like I feel like part of the design of it is to be like, let's mitigate the randomness of a game like Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever and make it so you have more decision making, you have more control over what's happening. You are like more in control of if you win or lose the game. And that makes it a game that really appeals to strategically minded players, because it's easy to get tilted if you just feel like my deck didn't draw the right card, so I lose. So if it's harder for that to happen in a game, you're going to attract really competitive players, and there's a huge appetite. Yeah, they have, and there's a huge appetite in gaming in general, I think, for like highly competitive games and play and stuff.
Right. So I don't know. Speaking of the Manor podcast,
okay.
Michael was talking about the how Talishar. So they were talking about this, what you've got on your phone right here.
Oh yeah.
February, our dear friend Philip.
Oh yeah. It's funny because I feel like we heard him talk about this data before he released it, and he was like, I'm not really sure what to do with it, and then I just opted to.
I remember telling him not to.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't think you should release any of that, because everyone has this weird feeling. So February released 194,000 games played on Talishar. It is not the decks. There's no deck lists. It's just the win percentage of each hero against each hero.
Yeah, and then the field as a whole. So like the overall win rate.
This epsilon is, that's what that stands for, right?
I think so.
Epsilon says like their overall win rate generally. And then you've got a cross section of, we'll put this in the notes, I guess.
Sure.
If we remember.
It's just if you go to stats and then meta on
February.com, February.net/stats. So there's all this new data right before ProQuest, and everyone's up and talking about it. And one thing that Michael Hamilton pointed out on the Manor podcast, did you listen to that episode?
I did, yeah.
Is that, so when this became a problem in Magic, what was happening was they were releasing every deck that went 5-0 in tournaments or something.
Oh, yeah.
Something in like Magic Online tournaments.
So specifically, like a deck would have a win rate. And
right, because there isn't heroes, right? So it made sense.
What else do you put? Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, what builds? And so you'd start seeing very quickly. They would release a set, and then the decks would start winning, and then people started playing decks really quickly, and just like, okay, this is it. Like they within a couple of cards, the deck itself would be the thing that everyone would gravitate to.
Yeah,
and that really that became a problem because it was just like people solving the meta too fast.
Yeah. In a way where it was like, okay, that clearly is the best build of this deck. Yeah, and that's like
right. So I don't like know anything about Magic, but like the thing is that I don't know if that's really something that's possible, because it's like I feel like every time something like that happens in Flesh and Blood, people are wrong. Yeah. Like in Flesh and Blood, now Starvo is a good example of it being pretty correct. Like Starvo came out, people were like, this is, I guess, good. I don't know. And then
Uh-huh.
some people didn't know. And then like it took a couple of weeks for people to be like, this is fucking broken.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone sort of go on to play Starvo.
Yeah.
But as we saw, while it was extra good, it still had really hard time into Prism and Chain.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think people didn't like the way Starvo worked.
Mm-hmm.
Was it too good? Is sort of is kind of a weird question to answer, because I don't think even the Starvo meta, I don't think, and we've argued about this a little bit. I don't know what solved means.
Yeah.
Like, we've argued about this and that, like, when it comes to actually using the word solved in terms of like, in game theory sense, like Go isn't solved.
Right.
Like
chess is like close to solve, but not completely. And
I don't think it's even close, actually.
I think it's like there's certain like
it doesn't mean a robot can beat one guy. Like,
there's like end game situations where it's like there's less movements or whatever, less possibilities. And I think it's like from those more simple positions, it's possible to like literally map out like every possible permutation, like all the millions of things, and be like, okay, so the ones that win are these moves.
Right. And so that's not ever going to happen
That's
with Flesh and Blood.
That's what's cool about card games is that's like by definition impossible. Like, I don't think if you had a computer where every atom in the universe was a circuit, you could solve Flesh and Blood.
You still couldn't, because there's too much randomness.
There's just too many possibilities. Yeah, it's like, it'd be like saying you could solve poker.
Right. Also, yeah, exactly.
You can't solve
poker
because every time you have a different deck. There's like what? Like,
it's like trying to solve craps.
Yeah,
like
there's trillions of permutations of how a deck can be shuffled. That's not how it works.
Like, you can sort of glean like the best decisions in certain areas, but you're kind of guessing, and that's what's fun about it.
Yeah, because it's like
so I don't really know what people are fucking talking about when they say that things are solved. I guess what they're really saying is that with the array of cards that are legal, this is the best thing to play.
Like, maybe if there's like a clear best deck or a clear best hero, like if you're like, okay, there's one hero that is better than the rest. Like, I would maybe say during the Lightning Briar era, you could say like, I'm not saying I agree with this necessarily. Like, maybe you could have said like, okay, the strongest deck that you could be playing is Lightning Briar. But I feel like the thing about a card game like Flesh and Blood especially is that there's so many. I'm sure you can think of like 5 counter examples of be like, what if someone was playing ice heavy Oldhim? And that
even in something like Magic, I find it very confusing because they say, oh, the meta's solved. Okay, so this is the best deck, and then what happens? Does that deck have no bad matchups?
Yeah.
Like, what if you build something that's specifically trying to take out that deck?
Right.
Like, do they mean that every single time a Magic would release a set that there was a Starvo? Like, even worse than a Starvo, where they would build a deck and then it would just be like, oh, well, no one can beat this, and so you're just fighting mirrors of that deck. I don't think that's what they mean, so I'm very confused.
I think to some extent it means it's like going to be a lot of mirrors of like the best deck.
Okay.
Kind of, but
so you're just always playing whatever it is. You're always playing red burning or whatever.
Red deck wins or whatever.
I'm not going to pretend like I know all the phrases.
I don't really
but
know.
The point is that
the
point is that even if that's how Magic worked, that like every time a set would come out, I don't think that's how Flesh and Blood will ever work. Like, I don't think we're ever going to see a set come out and then there's a race to find the best deck, and then there will be an answer.
Yeah.
Like, especially what we've learned, I think, from Uprising and Dynasty is that they are very careful. They've very carefully and immaculately designed this game so that is never the case.
There's a lot of decks with like,
and when it was close, with Starvo, people freaked out. But it wasn't even complete. Like, it wasn't like obviously Starvo. It wasn't obviously you build Starvo this way and then you win. He didn't even win the Pro Tour.
Right. He lost the chain. Yeah.
He lost the chain.
Maybe that's because they banned Awakening and, a couple
other
other things.
Sure.
Or maybe chain
you can fuck
just,
up, but...
Yeah. But also, like, people were building chain expecting Starvo. So maybe it's just... It's like, at what point is it solved? Because when do people stop building the best deck and then someone else builds a different deck? that takes it down or whatever.
And I feel like that's the thing, is that we've had these conversations. You hear people like, Manor and Arsenal Pass be like, is this solved? And like they say it as a joke. And I think the reason is because I don't think we're going to have solved metas. If we're saying solved just means people figured out what the best deck is and played it.
There is like one correct choice, and then that's the deck people play.
Because that's not how the game works.
I feel like it'd be like saying that basketball was solved or something.
Because Michael Jordan was playing.
Yeah, or be like, okay, so Steph Curry decided the best strategy is to shoot as many threes as possible. And then it's like, okay, but what if every other team gets better at defending 3-pointers or something? Like they specifically draft players that block threes.
Well, that's what happened.
And yeah, it's kind of how it goes. Yeah, or other teams start shooting threes too, and then it's less of an advantage. Or if a game is mutating, then
right. So this data in particular that Fabre released, I don't even know if I think it's useful. And it was funny because I was saying this to you before I listened to this Manor podcast, but Michael was saying similar stuff, and I feel like even Roger wasn't even on his side about it completely. Yeah. But I think this is near useless data.
Yeah. I think I would agree. And I would actually go a little like, because I've sort of seen arguments people will have about like, well, how...
Yeah, give me the devil's advocate.
Oh, I'm not even going to devil's advocate. I'm going to agree with you even harder, I think. Like, well, because, like, I assume, like, part of the reason that people say this is useless is because, like you were saying earlier, that Magic data was based on, like, people were playing in a like sanctioned competitive thing where you like won packs or something if you won, right? So you had a pretty heavy incentive to do well. Talishar is just people hopping on and playing at any level of effort or, concern, or maybe they're playing and, it's like if you're playing a Magic thing and you've told your wife like, hey, this is a real game, your wife or husband or whoever, I don't want to be having a stereotype of like a nagging wife stopping you from playing your video game.
When your bitch wife is telling you to stop playing.
To go do the dishes or take the trash out. But no, I'm just saying, hypothetically, anyone in your life.
What am I saying?
If you're saying, if you tell someone, hey, I'm playing this thing, it has real stakes, even though it's on the computer and I'm playing a real person, so I don't want to like stop and lose. They might be willing to be like, hey, can you do this later when you finish your game? If you're playing Talishar and it has no stakes other than an arbitrary win rate, you'll be like, hey, gotta go, sorry, and ditch. And like, that's a factor. But so even ignoring that aspect, like I've sort of, seen people argue about like some people will say stuff like, the players on Talishar suck, which is like, I think the real, like, what they mean is the players on Talishar suck as opposed to players at tournaments who are good. But I think a lot of players at tournaments suck too. No shade to players at tournaments. Like, I feel like people do this kind of thing with Battle Hardens, where like someone will win I remember right after Dynasty came out, someone won a Battle Harden with Dash, and people were like, oh, Dash is crazy. Or like before National season, Oldhams were winning events, and people were like, oh, Ice Winter or whatever. And it's like a Battle Hardened, I don't know, even like a calling, as far as I'm concerned. Like, Rhinar won the calling at Worlds. Yeah. Do you think that means that Rhinar was the best deck in that meta?
Right, no.
I don't think anyone thinks Rhinar was the best deck in that meta. So what does it mean that Rhinar won? It means that there's a lot of luck in winning card games. There's a lot of skill as well. Like, he had a weird deck. And this is like Hayden was saying on a Patreon episode. I'm sorry to give away your secrets. Yeah. But, they were talking about on Arsenal Pass, like the best thing to do in a card game tournament is get free wins. And one of the ways you do that is build a deck that no one has any idea what it does. And that's very difficult to do in this game because of how small the card pools are for each class and hero. But it's not impossible. You've got people like Cash and Michael Hamilton and Arsenal Pass who were like, what if we figure out a combo for Kano that is goddamn near unavoidable? And like that took people to the top 8 of the fucking first Pro Tour. They didn't win, but like they got really close. Sasha and Pope, right? Pope. Alexander Vore. Alexander Pope is the writer.
Shut up.
Sorry, I'm just saying.
No, I'm kidding.
Alexander Vore, yeah.
Vore.
He was in top 8 as well. Yeah, I forgot.
It was two Kanos in the top 8 in the Starvo meta. So it was just like, that's possible. And then you have Icelander, Bull, Michael Hamilton making Bullander. No one had made that, or at least no top players who I saw had made this thing. He comes in and people are like, oh, Icelander, I'll put on all my AB, and then they're getting hit for 8 every fucking turn, physical.
Yeah.
And he was dying, and people were dying to him left and right. And so I think that's nationals that happened.
Yeah.
I think when you've got people brewing out there, you don't know what they're going to see. And Michael's big point was this data doesn't include what version of the hero it is. Like, does Icelander have 52% wins overall because everyone's playing Bulllander, or is are people trying out other weird shit? Like, are half those losses because people are trying out Brainstorm Icelander or whatever?
Yeah. Which, like, the thing is, I think you should. Like, I think
absolutely
people who are on Talishar,
that's how you win.
People who are on Talishar playing for a win rate, like, that is missing the point completely of practice. I think if all you're doing is being like, okay, I know this deck is good, I assume it's good because it won a tournament. Let's play it, and you beat a lot of people. You're like, okay, I've confirmed what I already sort of knew, that this deck is good. Versus if you change it and then experiment, and then it might lose, and you lower your win rate
for a while,
and then you could you can sort of be like zeroing in. I mean, this is what's so hard about this data, is that it's like you could change one card in a deck list and play 20 games. Play like 10 games with one card and then swap to a different card, play 10 more games, like say Heart of Fiendal. And it's like, maybe after 20 games, you could be like, do I win more or less with Heart? But you'd have to actually look even deeper into the data and be like, how often did I actually see Heart? How much did the one life matter? What was the opportunity cost of the card I didn't have? And that's about one card. So if you have more, like 4 or 5 cards different, at that point, it's just noise. Like, which difference actually made you win or lose? Completely unclear.
Yeah, I mean, it's just okay. So let's. What is the use of this data? I think for me, I think you could look at it and say this is what everyone is playing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that it's like the meta is. So people sometimes talk about the meta as though it's like this thing that can be discovered. Like, you dig deep enough in the dirt, and you'll find like, hey, here's the best deck. Here's the second best deck. Here's the third best deck. But it means like what every other player is playing. So it's like it tells you which decks people are doing well with. And I feel like the really polarized ones, like Arachne has a 27% win rate into Bravo. That kind of tells me that it's really hard for Arachnes to beat Bravos. Same with Arachne into Dromai is 16%. That tells me it's almost impossible to beat Dromai. But with the caveat, of course, of like, as people are building Arachne now and as people are building Dromai now, it's really hard to beat Dromai. And like, that's what I would guess if you just asked me. If you were like, who do you think wins again on average, Arachne into Dromai? I'd be like, probably Dromai, because she's a really hard deck to fatigue if you can't pop all the dragons, and she just overwhelms you even if she has no cards left in her deck. So probably Dromai. And it's like, the data bears it out. So I feel like with stuff that it's pretty obvious how it goes, like, it also, if you look at like every mirror match, I think is 50%, which is like by definition, because right, and that's like just a fact, because it's like the same hero playing each other, so one wins and one loses, so it is 50%.
Right.
So that's just like
it's impossible.
That as I said that, I was like, wait, of course it's 50%.
But what I find like obviously wrong about this data is like the people who have 50% win rates overall.
Right.
Katsu. Lexi.
Yeah.
Dash 46%.
Right. This says that
this is impossible.
Lexi is better than Dash in the current meta.
That simply means that more people are playing Dash.
Right.
And that means more people are losing, because you want to be trying weird shit and losing.
That's true. Most people are like, if someone is like, I want to find a deck for ProQuest, jump into something good, how about Dash? I don't think many people are like, let me try Lexi for the first time right now to play in ProQuest. So you have a lot of like diehards playing Lexi, probably.
I mean, there might be, like you've even said, if you're expecting to see a lot of Phis, the best thing you could bring is probably Lexi.
I think she's like pretty fine into Icelander and amazing into Phi, and probably can be good into Dash. Dash, I don't know, because she might be able to fatigue, but yeah, I don't know. But also there's a lot of Levia diehards, and she has the lowest win rate, 38% overall.
Right, but that means that probably, a lot of people playing like there's at least 6 versions of Levia.
Right.
Like
yeah,
Claws
that's the thing.
Hexagore Levia, Medax Levia.
Low blood debt, like super high blood debt.
Right. Blood
whatever.
Rush Bellow, people are trying Berserk stuff. And people are, the thing that maybe they're sucking, and maybe she is bad. I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. Like, we just don't know. It doesn't mean you can't look at this and be like, okay, the people who aren't winning, you're going to see more of in your meta.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's also the
factor, the people who are winning, you're going to, like, I feel like, actually, though, now, if you think about it this way, if people don't agree with us, you might see a lot more Bravos and Briars and Oldhams now.
Right. People
because
are
they're like, oh, they're the best, so I better play them.
I should play Bravo, yeah. And I don't think Bravo's good.
At Action City, Michael Fang just won the Armory last night on Oldham.
Right.
No one was playing Oldham in CC like at our Armory.
Locally, yeah. I feel like one other person has played Oldham that I've been at any CC event I've been to.
Right. So now everyone's going to be on him now.
Maybe,
and it's not necessarily because he's the best deck or because he's even a really good deck. It just means like he probably still has really fucking terrible matchups into Phi. It just means
not amazing. Yeah.
It just means
what is Oldham's win rate into Phi on here? Let's see.
So I think it's a little bit hard to even use this data. Is all I'm saying.
Well, and that is the thing. It's like I don't really think you can like glean anything too meaningful from this data, but people still will. So it'll sort of affect things. But that's also true of like just tournament wins. Like Dash won a Battle Hardened, so more people were like buying up. Like Teklo Foundry Heart has almost doubled in price since Dynasty came out, and that's because people are buying it to play Dash, probably because they think Dash is going to be good. So there can be a lot more Dashes
probably
around.
Because of that. What was it, a Battle Hardened, right?
Yeah, it was in Philly, I think.
Or the other top 3 decks Reinars?
I think the
or
final.
Am I thinking of Singapore?
I think I was in Singapore. I think the finals at this Battle Hardened was a Dash mirror. It was like 3 or 4 Dashes in the top 8. But also it's a Battle Hardened, so it's like that girl who won. She has one unlucky matchup on Gem, or she misplays enough, and then she loses a key game, and then she's not even in top 8, and then someone else wins, and then suddenly Lexi wins, and we're like, wow, is Lexi cracked? Like,
yeah.
Like Lexi won that Battle Hardened in Singapore, right?
Right.
Beat 3
Lexi
Bravos.
best deck.
Yeah.
Cracked. S tier.
I was gonna say that I feel like even more so than like when you compare to Magic, I don't know exactly how true this is about like really high level competitive Magic, but if you just give a Flesh and Blood player a 60 card deck or like an 80 card deck, like here's Michael Hamilton's deck, here's a matchup against Oldham, sideboard and then play the match.
Right.
You need a lot of practice to even know what the hell to do with the cards.
Sure.
Like in Magic, because of the way that you're like, okay, play one land and do one thing, play a second land and maybe do one thing. It's a little easier to like comprehend the choices you have to make. But I feel like if you're playing an Icelander deck, as soon as you have a hand of 3 blues and a red, and you're going second, and someone attacks you, and you're like, which of these 4 cards do I block with? Which do I arsenal? Which do I play? Which do I reveal for fuse? Like, that's many choices, and there's probably an incorrect one. Almost certainly there's one that makes you lose the game.
She's really hard to play.
Yeah.
And it's not just Icelander. Lots of the game is a hard game.
Yeah.
And you just really need practice. And so I think what we're trying to get at here is that people don't like an open meta. Or people want there to be a best deck because they want to. This is a skill that a lot of people haven't developed for this game, and especially because there's a lot of new players. They're sort of just like, well, what do I? Especially if you're coming from something like Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or Magic or whatever, they're like, okay, I want to get into the game and I want to win. What do I buy?
Right.
And the answer is sort of like, no one knows, dude.
Yeah.
Like, there's a couple of pretty good answers, like Oldham, Bravo, Dash, Icelander, Phi, even Dromai,
yeah.
Reinar.
Dromai top 8's a lot of events and like does well and like wins Battle Hardened. Has she won a major thing?
Like there's like half of the heroes in the game are like very viable and like could very reasonably win Indy and Battle Hardened Jersey.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's like like literally half of them.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't get there is no answer.
Right.
Like I could tell you maybe avoid these because they're harder to play or they're not they don't ever win.
Yeah.
But like you've got like 8 choices.
Yeah.
And the truth is that you got to find something that feels comfortable, that you like the play style of, and then fucking practice, because it's a very skill heavy game, and there isn't really a here, play this, memorize the lines, and then you win.
I'm trying to think who I would like discourage a new player from playing to be competitive right now. I think Kano, because he's the hardest. Leviah and Bolton, because they're both not very competitive right now.
Yeah.
And Arachne, because their cards aren't finished. I think that's basically it in terms of who I would say, like, I would advise avoiding them. I think I would say, like, for Rangers, I would be like, try to have a pulse on the meta and accept that you might have to like gem your way to victory. But like, if everyone, like, say,
dude, if I sit down at the Battle Hardened and I sit down in front of Azalea, I'm gonna be like, I'm so annoyed because I could lose. I really don't know.
You don't know what's gonna happen.
Like,
if your deck isn't like specifically strong against Azalea, like you're not, I think Icelander has a pretty good Azalea matchup because Azalea is really like redline.
I know.
Oldham or Bravo would be good. But yeah, like, I don't know, if everyone is like,
there isn't a game, and then people like rag on Leviah and Azalea and even Lexi sometimes and Katsu, but like there is no free wins in this game, really. No. Like there's no auto losses, or I guess there are some matchups that are very nearly auto losses.
There's heavily polarized
there's very few straight up like, oh well, I'm gonna win.
I think the worst example,
like if I'm Dromai and I sit across from a Kano, you're not going to win.
You feel pretty good. Yeah.
Like
there's that one, and before there was like Oldham into Prism was like there's really nothing you can do. And I think even like sideboarding, like I think I talked about this on the Manor podcast, that it was like,
but then they give people, they like Dynasty comes out and they're like, no, you can do this, and people are like, oh fuck, so like it changes everything.
Yeah.
It's weird that Prism isn't in the game anymore.
When she just got a new legendary.
I was just thinking like Chain and Prism are good, but they're not even in the game.
Yeah. They could learn them for Living Legend, and
yeah, which is probably going to be happening soon. Anyway, this is my point is that you gotta sit down, just play the game. Don't worry too much. You can't spike this one. Like, there's not 3 decks you get to choose from. There's like 10, and you're gonna have to just pick one. So
you gotta play a deck you don't hate, because it'd be stupid to be like, I'm gonna grind out like Dorinthia just because I think it's the best meta pick, and then it's not even, and you're wasting. Like, play a deck that you have fun playing and that you think will do well, but a lot of decks could do well, so you just gotta learn. You got
a lot of choices, so the game isn't like that, so don't worry about it this time. You probably won't win anyway, because just statistically most people aren't going to win.
Wait till Outsiders, when Lena Bell will be SSS tier and just crack the game open.
Speaking of Dynasty, or speaking of Lena Bell and Outsiders, before we go, in our last episode we read the thing, and then everyone knows they released their first card.
Oh yeah,
which is an assassin card called Razor's Edge, which looks cool. It has a new keyword called stealth. Lots of people are theorizing what all of that shit could mean.
Speculating.
Fact is, the episode's over and we don't know. So listen to the Living Legends podcast, and they'll tell you what they think. But the answer is we don't know. Yeah. And also, the only thing we now know, and is confirmed, as I've said before, is that Assassin's in there.
Right. We know Assassin's in there, and we know one of the fan favorite faces returning in this set is Azalea, or some weirdly vague statements.
Right. Maybe Azalea is a playable, draftable hero again. That is not confirmed.
I don't consider that confirmation. I consider that a heavy hint.
Yeah.
It's pretty likely that Azalea is a draftable. It'd be weird to say that and she's not. But also,
there could be allies in a new weird way.
Yeah.
Like, what we know about Flesh and Blood and LSS specifically is that they like to do stuff that are weird curveballs.
Right.
Like, they like to be like, hey, talents. Hey, dragons.
Yeah.
Like, no one looked at Uprising and was like, I bet they'll take the concept of allies and make a whole hero that only has allies.
Yeah.
And like, you just have a huge board state. Like, no one thought that. Like, they do weird shit, and sometimes they might introduce bombs. Like, we don't know. We don't know what's gonna be what it's gonna be like. There's smoke bombs that like make you be able to unuse your entire board state or whatever.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Like,
and like,
did Bolton come back in Dynasty because there was a Bolton specialization? Or it's not even a Bolton specialization, but it just has Bolton on the card and it's only Light Warrior. Like,
is it a specialization?
Well, it's weird.
Oh, it's Light Warrior.
It's not, but the card it mentions, Lumina Ascension, is a Bolton specialization. So far, only Bolton would want to use it, but they didn't make it. Maybe they didn't want to give the combo to.
And Soraya is not a Prism specialization; it's a Light Illusionist.
I think so.
Card.
Yeah.
Weird.
Maybe they didn't want to give it to Shiana, like the Spirit of Irina and Lumina Ascension, both being.
Oh, interesting.
Being Bolton specializations.
Well, anyway.
I don't know.
So we don't know anything about Outsiders except that there is for sure Assassin, which doesn't necessarily mean Arachne. And if I had to put money on it, it will be someone else.
I don't think it is Arachne because
I think we talked about this already, but
maybe Arachne doesn't use stealth. No, we haven't talked about it on the show because that card wasn't out last time we did it, or we didn't know it was out.
Did we not? I feel like I remember talking to you about this.
It was just there were no microphones there.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, yes. So, like you said, Arachne doesn't have stealth on its hero text or their hero text, and that means it probably won't be Arachne because you'd have to reprint all of the draft chaff that they printed in Dynasty. So you'd get like. Maybe you get like a whole nother. The only way it makes sense is if they make an entire new set of like not draft chaff, but commons, like staple cards that are like a different archetype of Arachne, where it's like, okay, now he gets a 0 for 4 that has stealth on it, or they have that. Really bad with they them pronouns. I'm very sorry.
Sorry, Arachne.
It's not on purpose. Arachne gets, a 0 for 4 that has stealth on it, and also a 1 for 5 with stealth on it, and also, a 0 for 3 with a really crazy on hit. Like they have to reprint all of those cards in cycles in Outsiders, but they'd have to be a whole different,
Yeah, I feel like it's just going to be...
Why wouldn't it just be a different assassin? So I don't know.
A new assassin that has a stealth keyword, and then it's like... Because having a keyword on a card sort of hints that it's, it's like Dromai, a lot of her commons involve Ash in some way, and that's part of her hero text is that she makes Ash. So I feel like it's implying that stealth is on the assassin's hero text in the set. Otherwise, why would it be so common? And honestly, it's if there is an assassin or a ranger in this set, it's feeling more likely to me that their arrows might also have stealth. Like I'm kind of thinking, because remember I actually tweeted about this, that the attack react doesn't have to target an assassin attack. It just says any attack with stealth. So I think there's going to be like generic stealth attacks and probably like arrows with stealth as well.
Maybe stealth is a talent.
Yeah, maybe or maybe like being
stealth ranger.
Yeah. Stealth is some kind of talent.
We don't know. The point is that we've gone too long, and we're just theory crafting here. We don't know. I was so wrong about so many things in Uprising because we didn't know anything.
We're just guessing.
It's just guesses. So we can't all be Capolo and like absolutely nail
what the shield is going to be.
Bastion of Eisenloff.
I'm already getting excited for legendaries and Outsiders though.
Oh, baby.
What are those going to do?
Now that we have all the ones in Dynasties, time to move on to the next one.
Time to collect the next set.
Yeah, can't wait. So thanks so much for listening to Banished Zone. If you'd like to... No, I don't have a Patreon. Not yet. But you can follow me at Banished Zone on Twitter. You can follow Chris at Blue Plunder on Twitter. You can please go subscribe to twitch.tv/Banished Zone.
Check it out, or follow. You can't subscribe yet because I'm not at affiliate.
You will be this week,
but
like next week.
I need to hit the follower. So give me a follow, and then I'll reach the number where I'm allowed to become an affiliate, and then you can subscribe and then give money to I think Flake is always like, you're sending that straight to Jeff Bezos's bald head or something if you're subscribing.
Right, so, yeah. Sorry, but
give
that's
a little money to
that's the
Jeff
world
Bezos
we
and then to
fucking
me.
live in. So okay, follow us there. Follow Chris on Twitch. Maybe I'll be around there sometimes too.
You could use it too. Maybe we'll do like live streams, like physical streams sometime of playing cards.
Surely we will. And I think that's all. If you want me to open a box for you, you can use the form and order a box from me now from Action City. But otherwise, until next time, you're banished.
You're banished.
Bye.